It's Saturday morning, nothing on the calendar until Monday. No meetings, no deadlines. And before your eyes are even fully open, before coffee, you reach for your phone and start a list. Not a list of things you want to do, a list of things you're behind on. Laundry. The email you didn't answer Friday. That message you've been meaning to send for 2 weeks. You tell yourself you're being responsible. You'll relax once it's handled. But once it's handled, keeps moving. By the time the list is done, it's evening, and you're too tired to do anything except sit on the couch with the TV on, phone in your other hand, scrolling without really watching either screen. Then bed. Then, somewhere in the dark, you start rebuilding tomorrow's list in your head. This is what burnout recovery actually looks like for a lot of people. Not a dramatic collapse. Sometimes there's a version of that too, but more often it's quieter than that. It's someone who looks completely fine, still showing up, still answering messages, still getting things done, but who has gone flat somewhere underneath. Things that used to interest you now take effort just to care about. You're not sad exactly, you're running on a version of yourself that's mostly engine and barely any person. What confuses people is that the fix seems obvious. Take a few days off, sleep in, go somewhere, do less. So you try it, and you come back from the long weekend, or the week off, feeling almost exactly the same as before you left. Sometimes worse, because now there's a quieter panic underneath it. If rest didn't fix this, what will? Here's the part nobody tells you clearly enough. The time off usually isn't the problem. What you did inside the time off often is. Watch what actually happens on a day with nothing scheduled. There's a small moment early on where you have a choice between doing nothing and doing something. And most of the time, something wins. You reorganize a drawer that didn't need it. You answer an email that could have waited until Monday. You read an article about how to fix burnout instead of sitting still for 10 minutes. The list keeps refilling, sometimes with chores, sometimes with self-improvement, and either way, the engine never actually shuts off. People call this staying productive. It's closer to avoidance with better lighting. What's actually being avoided is the moment right after the list runs out. The stretch where there's nothing left to do and nothing left to prove, and you're left with however you actually feel. For a lot of burned out people, that stretch is hard to sit in. Not because rest itself is the threat, but because stopping means feeling the full weight of how tired you actually are, and some part of you has been managing that weight by staying just busy enough to never fully feel it land. So the list was never really about laundry. The list is a way of staying one step ahead of your own exhaustion. This is the part that's harder to hear. A lot of people aren't burned out purely because they work too much. They're burned out because they've never learned how to be idle without guilt. Put them in stillness and the body doesn't relax. It gets restless, almost itchy, like something must be wrong if nothing's happening. So the silence gets filled the only way it knows how. With tasks, with scrolling, with small, low-stakes motion that performs as rest but functions almost exactly like work, just with softer lighting and no deadline attached. There's a smaller version of this in conversation too. Someone asks how you're doing and you say, "I'm fine, just tired," and you mean it as the full answer, when the more honest sentence underneath might be closer to, "I don't actually know how to stop, and I'm a little afraid of what happens if I do." Nobody says that out loud at a dinner table. It sounds like too much for small talk. So tired ends up carrying everything else. And there's a particular evening this tends to show up in. Sunday, around 7 or 8, the weekend's list is mostly finished, nothing left to organize. And instead of relief, there's a specific low dread that creeps in. Some people just call it the Sunday feeling, the week already pressing against the glass before it's even started. That dread isn't really about Monday. It's the body registering that the busyness is about to stop, and there's no plan underneath it for what to do with an hour that isn't managed. There's also a quieter mix-up happening underneath most of this, worth naming plainly. A lot of people have stopped being able to tell the difference between tired and behind. Tired is a body needing rest. Behind is a mental tally of unfinished things, and it can sit there whether or not you've actually slept enough. Most burned out people are responding to behind, treating it like an emergency that has to be cleared before rest is allowed, when what's actually underneath the behind feeling is just tired, asking for something far simpler than another finished list. A second part of this pattern is harder to see because it doesn't look like burnout at all. It looks like identity. Staying busy stops feeling like a strategy and starts feeling like who you are. You become the reliable one, the one who always has it together, the one who never drops the ball. That reputation feels good, sometimes even earned, but it quietly makes rest feel like a small betrayal of the person everyone, including you, has come to expect. So a friend's text sits unanswered for 2 days, not because you're avoiding the friend, but because answering it doesn't feel as urgent as the next useful thing, and the useful thing always wins, because the useful thing is who you've decided to be. The honest contradiction underneath all of this is that the very thing people use to recover from burnout, doing, managing, optimizing, fixing, is the same operating system that caused it. You can't out-organize an exhausted nervous system. You can build a to-do list for your own rest, color-code it, set reminders for it, and you'll still be running the same program underneath, just wearing a softer outfit. And the cost of that isn't dramatic, even though it adds up. It's the version of you that shows up to dinner with people you love, technically present, half listening, already thinking about tomorrow's first task. It's the people who keep getting the depleted, distracted version of you because the rested one never actually switches on. It's months, sometimes years, of never being fully off, just dimmed, and calling that normal because you've lost track of what fully on used to feel like. None of this means ambition is the enemy, or that doing nothing is automatically the goal, or that rest has to look like a retreat with candles and a journal you never open again. That can become its own performance, just dressed differently. The actual shift is smaller than that, and far less photogenic. It's catching the exact moment you reach for the next task, when nothing is actually required of you, and instead of completing it automatically, naming what's underneath the urge. Not fixing it, not analyzing it for 20 minutes, just noticing quietly. I'm about to do this because sitting still feels uncomfortable, not because it needs to happen right now. That single moment of noticing, repeated often enough, does more for recovery than another empty calendar ever will. It isn't about clearing your schedule. It's about becoming someone who can sit in a chair with nothing to do and not flinch. This isn't a clinical claim, and it won't land the same way for everyone. Burnout carries different weights for different people, and sometimes what helps is more than noticing a pattern. It can mean real rest, support from people around you, and in some cases professional help, especially if the exhaustion has gone on a long time or started to feel heavier than tiredness. If that's closer to where you are, talking to a doctor or a therapist is worth doing, not as a last resort, but as a normal, reasonable part of taking this seriously. So picture that Saturday morning again, phone in hand, list half written, before your eyes are even fully open. The version of you that's actually recovering doesn't necessarily delete the list. The laundry still needs doing either way. But there's a pause before the phone now. A few seconds where you notice the urge to fill the morning before you felt anything about the morning at all. And in that pause, just once, you put the phone down first and let the quiet sit there, unfilled and a little uncomfortable, until it stops being something you need to outrun. This video is meant for reflection, not as a diagnosis or a replacement for professional support.